For years, I was told that our family's wealth was a blessing from God for our obedience. But as I sat at my kitchen table, realizing I had spent 7.5 years of my adult life working for free while my father collected millions, the veil finally dropped. Today, I'm taking you behind the high gates of the big house and the cold bars of a federal prison in Texas. We are talking about the $5,000 mystery, where the money went, who it was hidden from, and the reality of my brother Josh's life behind bars, where he is reportedly stripped of the luxury he once took for granted. This isn't just a story about a pauper drama or missing millions. It's about the cost of the truth. I'm Jill Duggar-Dillard, and this is the unedited account of the empire my father built and the price we all had to pay for it. Let's count the cost. I'm sitting here in my home in February 2026, and looking back at the last decade feels like waking up from a long, confusing dream. For years, the world saw us as a perfect family, a ministry on television that showed what total obedience to a patriarch could look like. We were told that the big house was a sanctuary and that the millions of people watching us were our congregation. But as I sit here now, I realize that sanctuary was built on a foundation of silence and hidden ledgers. My father, Jim Bob, often used the word blessing to describe our fame, but for many of us, it felt more like a cage. In this segment, I want to talk about how the illusion was crafted. It wasn't just the modesty or the homeschooling. It was the psychological umbrella of protection that meant my father had final say over our clothes, our relationships, and eventually our bank accounts. We were the product, and in 2026, I'm finally ready to show you the real price tag of that perfection. Let's talk about the money, specifically the $5,000 that has been a point of so much drama. Reports have shown that my father netted around $5 million from just one real estate deal with Walmart in recent years. That's in addition to the reported $32,500 per episode he was making during the peak of our show. For a long time, Derek and I were led to believe that we were doing the show for ministry and that our expenses were being covered. But when we sat down to look at the taxes, we saw a very different story. My father was reporting that I had earned hundreds of thousands of dollars, money I had never seen and certainly never spent. It was a Kangol paupered situation for the adult children, while the patriarch sat on millions. When we finally asked for my fair share of the labor I put in for over 7 years, it wasn't a family discussion. It was a legal battle. We eventually settled for $175,000, which didn't even feel like a victory. It felt like a receipt for a stolen childhood. It's impossible to talk about the family finances without talking about my oldest brother, Josh. He was the golden son, the one positioned for political power and leadership. But while my father was building this $5 million empire, he was also working tirelessly to hide the truth about Josh's behavior. In 2002 and 2003, my parents learned of Josh's sexually abusive behavior toward several of us sisters. And instead of calling the police or getting him professional help, they handled it internally to protect the ministry and the brand. This pattern of protection, choosing the image over the victims, was the root of the rot in our home. It created a culture where Josh felt untouchable, leading him from the big house to the dark web and eventually to a federal prison cell. The contrast in 2026 is almost unbelievable. One side of the family is purchasing $1 million estates, while my brother is inmate number 42501 to 509 at FCI Seegaville. He went from a world where he had everything handed to him, houses, cars, and influence, to a 12.5-year sentence for possessing and receiving child sexual abuse material. He is no longer the political prodigy or the family leader. He is a prisoner who has reportedly spent time in solitary confinement for having a contraband cell phone. People call it Kengol's pauper drama because he has been stripped of the autonomy my father's money once provided. He is finally in a place where no amount of money or influence can change the rules. In that cell, the millions of dollars my father built mean nothing. He is facing the consequences of his choices alone, while the rest of us are left to clean up the wreckage. When I decided to write my memoir, Counting the Cost, it was the hardest decision of my life. My father told me I was dishonoring him. He treated me, in his words, worse than a pedophile brother because I chose to wear pants, get a nose ring, and speak the truth about our money. But I realized that loyalty to a lie is not true loyalty. We had to walk away from the financial safety net of the Duggar name to find our own peace. Today, Derek is working as an assistant district attorney. We are finally debt-free and living on our own terms, not Jim Bob's. The $5,000 million may be in my father's bank account, but freedom is in ours. In the next segments, I'll dive into the specific Duggar rules that were designed to keep us compliant and how we finally broke those umbrellas of control. In this chapter, we have to go back to the year the world stopped believing in the Duggar Dream 2015. For years, my father had sold our family as the gold standard of Christian purity, but in a matter of months, that image was shredded. First, the records were leaked about what Josh had done to us as children, a secret my parents had buried for over a decade to protect the show. But then came the Ashley Madison scandal, finding out that my brother, the man who stood on stages preaching about family values, was paying for extramarital affairs, was a betrayal that felt like a physical blow. It wasn't just about his sin, it was about the hypocrisy of the entire empire. My father's response wasn't to repent or seek transparency, it was to manage the damage. He prioritized the $5 million brand over the actual souls of his children. This was the moment I realized that loyalty in our family was a one-way street, and that the truth was considered an enemy to the bottom line. Let's move the clock forward to the present day in 2026. Josh is no longer the golden son. He is a number in the federal system. He is serving his 12.5-year sentence at FCI Seegaville, a low-security facility that is a world away from the luxury of the big house. I want to be very clear about the Kangola pauper reality he faces there. Reports have surfaced that Josh has spent significant time in the SHU, Special Housing Unit, for violating prison rules, including having a contraband cell phone. In our family, rules were always for other people, but the federal government doesn't care about the Duggar name. His release date has been pushed back to late 2032 because he cannot seem to follow the simple instructions of his incarceration. He is stripped of his dignity, his influence, and the millions of dollars that used to buy his way out of trouble. Seeing him behind those bars is a somber reminder that you cannot mock God forever. Eventually, the bill for your choices comes due, and in Sagaville, Josh is finally paying it. Understand why it took me so long to ask about the $5 million. You have to understand the theology we were raised with. The IBLP taught the umbrella of protection. The Father is the top umbrella. As long as you stay under him, you are safe from the storms of the world. But this umbrella was actually a weapon of financial and emotional control. We were taught that borrowing money was a sin, which kept us from getting student loans or buying houses without my father's help. This made us Kangol by design. If we didn't have our own money, we couldn't leave the umbrella. My father used the show's profits to buy properties and land, which he would then allow us to live in, but always with strings attached. It was a kingdom built on the labor of children who were never allowed to grow up. In this segment, we examine the specific teachings of Bill Gothard that provided the legalistic framework for Jim Bob to claim our earnings as his own blessing from God. One of the most painful realizations for me was seeing the sheer scale of the wealth my father was struggling. My father was strumuting while we were struggling to pay for a hospital birth. In 2026, news broke about a massive real estate deal where my father reportedly sold land to Walmart for nearly 5,000 Zausern. This land was part of the empire he built using the fame we all generated as kids. While he was depositing millions, I was being told that I was disobedient for asking why my tax forms showed I earned money I never received. This is the heart of the Kangol drama, the contrast between a father living as a multimillionaire and adult children who had to beg for basic necessities. We were the faces of the brand, the reason the show was a hit, but we were treated like volunteers in our own lives. My father didn't just hoard the money. He used it as a carrot and a stick to ensure out of line. When Derek and I finally hired a lawyer, it wasn't because we wanted to be rich. We just wanted to be free. We had to sue my own father to get any of the money I had earned over 7.5 years of filming. The settlement we finally received was 107.75 Zausern, a fraction of what was actually owed, and much of it went to taxes and legal fees. My father viewed this as a declaration of war. He told me I was siding with the enemy. But the real enemy wasn't the law. It was the deception that had governed our lives. Taking him to court was the moment the umbrella finally broke. It was the most expensive 175,000 I ever earned because it cost me my relationship with my parents. But as I sit here in 2026 looking at my husband and my sons, I know it was worth every penny. We may not have the 1,000 million, but we have our integrity. And for the first time in my life, I am not anyone's pauper. In this segment, we have to look at the person who is perhaps the most trapped by the Duggar legacy, my sister-in-law, Anna. While Josh is physically behind bars at FCI Sagaville, Anna is living in a different kind of prison. She was raised in the same IBLP system we were, that teaches women that their husband's sins are a reflection of their own failure to be submissive enough. In 2026, Anna still lives on my father's property, reportedly in a converted warehouse, raising 7 children alone, while her husband serves a 12.5-year sentence. The Kengel's pauper drama is very real for her. Without her own income or a career, she is entirely dependent on my father's $5 million empire for her home, her food, and her children's education. It's a tragic cycle of dependency. We've reached out, but the walls my father has built around the inner circle are high. Anna has been taught that loyalty to Josh is loyalty to God, and that belief is being used to keep her compliant. She is the collateral damage of the secrets my parents kept for 20 years. As we look at the financial documents, we see that while the patriarch prospers, the widow and the fatherless, in this case, Josh's family are left to survive on whatever crumbs of the legacy are tossed their way. Life inside of federal prison is supposed to be a place of reflection, but for Josh, it has been a series of further transgressions. In this segment, we look at the reports from FCI Seegaville that suggest Josh spent a significant amount of time in the SHU, the special housing unit, often called the hole. Why? Because even in federal prison, he reportedly thought the rules didn't apply to him. He was caught with a contraband cell phone, a major violation that can lead to solitary confinement and the loss of good time credits. This is the ultimate Kangal moment. In the big house in Arkansas, Josh could do no wrong, and every mistake was covered by my father's influence or money. But at Seegaville, he is just a number. $5 a die if his million his father holds cannot buy him a smartphone or a private room. These infractions have pushed his release date back to late 2032. It's a pattern of behavior that shows a total lack of remorse. While the family tries to paint a picture of a man being persecuted, the reality is a man who continues to break the law even when he's already serving time for it. The SHU is a lonely, cold place, and it's where the reality of his choices finally meets the silence of his isolation. I often think about my younger siblings, Jackson, Johanna, Jennifer, Jordan, and Josie. They were babies when the show started, and they are young adults now in 2026. They are growing up in a house that is haunted by the scandals of their oldest brother and the financial control of their father. They see me and Derek being excluded. They see the empty spot in the family photos. In this segment, we explore how the younger generation is reacting to the truth. Some of them are starting to ask the same questions I did. They see the $5 million Walmart deals, and then they look at their own futures and realize they have no path to independence. My father's strategy has always been to keep the children Kangal, poor, so they have to stay home to survive. But the internet has changed everything. They can see the world. They can read my book. They can see that there is life outside the umbrella. I see the fear in my parents' eyes, the fear that the remaining children will realize that the protection they were promised was actually just a way to keep the family brand alive. The youngest generation is the one that will finally decide if the Duggar legacy is worth saving or if it's time to let the whole empire crumble. Let's look closer at the financial paper trail that surfaced in recent years. In 2026, details of a massive real estate transaction became public knowledge. My father, Jim Bob, reportedly sold a parcel of land to Walmart for nearly 5,000. For the public, this was just a business deal. For us, it was a confirmation of everything we suspected, while Derek and I were struggling to pay for groceries during law school and were being denied a few $1,000s from the show's earnings. My father was sitting on a mountain of cash. The wealth gap in our family is staggering. The patriarch lives in a mansion with millions in the bank, while his adult children are often left to scramble for used cars and fixer-upper homes that he technically owns. This $5 million wasn't family money, it was Jim Bob's money. It was never intended to set us up for success. It was intended to keep us on a leash. In this segment, we analyze how my father used his real estate company, Mad Family Inc., to funnel the show's profits into land and assets that he alone controls, ensuring that his power remains absolute even as the show that built his fortune has been off the air for years. For 20 years, the public perception of the Duggars was faith, family, and frugality. We were the kids who wore thrift store clothes and ate tater tot casserole. But the private reality was a multi-million-dollar business that operated more like a corporation than a ministry. In this segment, we look at the final fall of the mask. In 2026, the Duggar brand is no longer about Christian values. It's about a scandal-ridden family with a son in federal prison and a father who is accused of financial exploitation. The contrast is everywhere. You see Jessa and Joy-Anna trying to maintain a normal influencer life, while Duggar and I are out here telling the truth. The family is fractured and the money is the wedge. My father's $5 million can buy lawyers and land, but it cannot buy back the trust of his children or the respect of the public. The Kangal drama isn't just about being poor. It's about the poverty of spirit that comes when you choose money over your own family. The mask hasn't just slipped, it has shattered. What's left underneath is a cautionary tale about what happens when you build your house on secrets instead of the truth. I often look at my younger brothers and sisters who are still living under my father's roof, and I wonder what their 2026 looks. They are growing up in a home that is physically the same, but the atmosphere is haunted by the scandals of their oldest brother and the public exposure of our family's financial control. My prayer for them is that they find the courage to ask the questions I was too afraid to ask for nearly 30 years. Want them to know that there is a world outside of that 20-acre property where they are allowed to have their own thoughts, their own bank accounts, and their own lives. I hope they see that Derek and I are doing okay. We aren't the lost ones. We are the ones who finally found ourselves. I want them to know they are loved and that our door is always open whenever they are ready to step through it and start their own journey of independence. The cycle of the Kangal pauper lifestyle ends when you realize that your worth isn't tied to your father's approval or his $5 million estate. Leaving the ILP didn't mean leaving my faith. it meant finally finding it. In fact, it was my faith that finally gave me the strength to stand up and say no to the exploitation. I had to separate the God of the Bible from the version of God my father used to control us and keep the money flowing. Finding God outside the cult has been a journey of discovery. It's a God of grace and truth, not a God of checklists and financial blessings for blind obedience. In the silence of our new life, away from the cameras and the family meetings, I've found a peace I never knew existed. I've learned that God doesn't require me to protect a brand at the expense of my own safety or my children's future. True faith isn't about being perfect for an audience. It's about being honest in the dark. We are no longer performing. We are just living. And in that simple life, we have found a spiritual wealth that $5 million could never buy. As we look toward the future, the question of accountability remains. Justice for what happened in our home isn't just about Josh serving time in Sagaville. It's about acknowledging the systemic failures that allowed it to happen in the first place. It's about my father finally admitting that the show was a business and that he exploited his children for profit. In 2026, the Kangol drama has forced many people look at reality TV and influencer families with a more critical eye, and what has in laws that protect children who are featured on these shows so they aren't left with nothing while their parents walk away with millions. Accountability means making sure this never happens to another family. While my father continues to hold on to his $5 million and his secrets, the world is moving on. True justice isn't just found in a courtroom. It's found when the truth is told so loudly that the lies can no longer survive. The Duggar name used to be synonymous with a very specific kind of life, but in 2026, that legacy is being redefined. We are the generation that is breaking the chain. We are choosing to raise our children in homes where they are allowed to be themselves, where their privacy is respected, and where they aren't used as props for a ministry or a paycheck. I look at my sons, Israel, Samuel, and Freddie, and I am so grateful they will never know the umbrella of protection that was actually a cage. They are growing up with a father who works hard and a mother who speaks her mind. That is the legacy I want to leave. It's not a legacy of land or millions of dollars. It's a legacy of freedom. We are taking the good parts of our upbringing, the love for family and the work ethic, and leaving the control and the secrets behind. The chains are broken and they will stay broken. As I close this story, I want to speak directly to anyone who feels like they are being held hostage by a family secret or a controlling system. The truth might cost you everything. It cost me my relationship with my parents and the only life I had ever known. But the cost of staying is much higher. You cannot put a price on the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and know that you are no longer living a lie. My father may still have his $5 million, and my brother may still be in that cell in Texas, but I am here. I am Jill Duggar Dillard. I am a wife, a mother, an author, and a survivor. I am no longer a Kangol waiting for a patriarch's permission to exist. I have counted the cost, and the truth was worth every single penny. Thank you for listening, for believing, and for walking this long road with me. The story of the Duggars may have been a drama for the world, but for me, the ending is finally one of peace